Okay, we're doing another layout build video. Not going to be seeing anything being built here. We have an issue. When I was delivering this week, I noticed something that I had forgotten about. The area this layout's going to become, as I've said in other videos, though people ignored the videos on when I was telling about what this was going to be, was an industrial branch in Warsaw that served the freight depot, the elevator factory, another couple industries, one of which was a piano factory at least at one point, and there was Embry Lantern. Now, the building that's Embry Lantern, it's been added to. It's now Fairview Box Corporation, and I'll include some pictures of that later. But there's a creek that runs through this. It's Owaka Creek, and the railroad crosses Owaka Creek, which is why the plan for the model railroad has to jog over, because it goes from the depot, it comes down, the elevator factory, and then it comes down on the one side of the creek, comes down here, and then it crosses the creek and goes off this way. So you could turn the creek, but you can't turn the creek enough to make it straight, and it wouldn't. I tried to work it out so you can make it straight. I tried to make it like angled, and it just wasn't working out. So I have to use 2 4x 2.5 modules, one for the depot and one for the elevator factory, and then a 1.5 by 3 or 2 by 3. It's going to have to be about 1.5 by 3 to fit through the door, the way it has to be, to have the bridge, and then have a 1 by 4. Not 1 by 4. 2.5 by another couple 2.5 by 4 foot modules representing the other side of the creek, the other industries. So I bought this, and I was thinking that I would cut it this way down to 2.5 feet and have the extra for stuff and have it be cut 4.5 feet. But looking at where one of the other industries was, and considering the depth of the creek, 2 inches of foam is not going to be enough. I got to do 4 inches. And then the creek is probably not going to be as deep as it is. But there's why. Now, the one business that was served by the railroad is now Montgomery's Building Supply. And quick pause the video for photos of that. So that's what it looks like now. If you looked at one of the photos, you'd notice that there is a difference in elevation. Take a look back, keep watch, and we'll show those again. Here you have that old building, and then next there's that driveway that goes down into the yard of Montgomery Building Supply. That was, I think at one time it was a GLF or something like that. That received coal. Now that retaining wall is old enough, that was most likely there. And so there's a lower elevation, and there probably was a coal trestle there. So I have to have the track at the same height. It can't go up, because it was at the same height, being able to unload coal underneath it. that's going to take 2 inches of foam at least, which would put it at this below the creek level, which it's not quite that low. So, and that would be pushing it with the bottom of the foam. It would be paper thin. So I'm going to have to do 4 inches of foam. So this is not going to work. And then I was thinking, wait a minute. This is already 4 feet this way. We'll cut the foam this way, 2.5 feet, which gives me 2.5, 5 feet, 7.5. I have half foot of over on that side. Cut off 6 inches and cut this into 3 pieces. Then I have enough for one module of 4 inches and one module of 1 inch of 4 inches of 2 inches. That's going to raise the costs because this stuff is not cheap. This stuff is $50. So this model railroad is going to stay around a little while longer because I'm not going to get another piece of foam until I have the foam cutter to cut it. And people have suggested using a razor blade to score and cut. I think the foam they're talking about is 1 inch thick, not 2 inches. You try doing that with this stuff, and it's too dense. You'd need a very, very long razor blade, and yeah, cutting 2 inches is not the same as cutting 1 inch. 1 inch you can just score and break. This stuff you have to cut it. I mean, you can't. I mean, you might be able to score it. You can score it deep enough, but then that's going to leave a very, very annoying rough edge, and that's not something I want to deal with. Now, framing it. Now you can see I have 2 pieces of 1x4 here. It's going to be framed by 1x4s. These were going to be used as a programming track. I was going to glue them back together end to end, and that didn't work out, so I ended up getting the 8-foot piece that's out there and not having it cut in half and just managing to get it up here. So they'll be framed. Now this, of course, this will go along like... Quit falling farther than I want you to. This will like go along this edge, and that's exactly the right length. So the 2.5 foot pieces on the outside, they'll have to be cut, and I'll have to wait to do that until I have a saw in the house, because that's something that I have to do the measurements and get it cut. I can't really do the precision cutting, have them do that at the lumber yard. I need to be able to do that at home, so I have to get a saw as well before I can frame it. So that's the foam cutter, saw, and the Dremel tool to cut the rail, because I don't like rail nippers. It flattens out the rail, it pinches it. Then you have to use a file on it, and that's just ridiculous, too much work. And with the amount of track laying I'm going to be doing in the future, a Dremel is a lot better, and it's a lot quicker, and a lot more cost productive, lot less labor intensive, and it has many other uses. While rail nippers only have one use, and they're not very good at that. Now I had toyed with the idea of having the framing be like this, and having the foam sitting underneath, sitting on top of it. But with having to have 4 inches, one piece is going to be sitting on top of the wood, and I'll have some type of fascia material, something. And the other piece is going to be like this. So the foam, the bottom piece of foam, which will be a little bit smaller to fit in there, will sit in the foam like this, and it'll be like, this is the bottom, and this will be framed, and then it'll either be screwed in like this, or have to be, yeah, it has to be screwed in like this, because otherwise the foam would sit too far down. And that'll leave a little bit of space here, so I can staple the wires to the wood, and then the wires will be up, they won't be dangling down, and they'll be fairly protected, and I'll have a fascia, some type of fascia material protecting the edge of the foam that's sitting on top of the piece of wood, the top piece of foam, and that'll increase the weight a little bit with 4 inches of foam instead of 2, but it has to be done to create that. Now let's take a look at Fairview Box Corporation, which was Embry Lantern at the time. Now, the building is L-shaped, but that part that you saw sticking out, when I took photos from Industrial Street, you see a part sticking out towards, I didn't take a picture of upstate door, but it sticks out that way. That part was not there. The building was long, it was going up along Allen Street, which is a street I'm on when I'm taking pictures of the long side of the building that don't show a parking lot. That's Allen Street, and the one end looking up the hill, that was not there. That's part of the part that comes out of the L. So it's not quite as long, but it's too long for the model railroad. So I'm going to have to turn it. I'm going to have to turn it and have it be this way instead of this way. And Montgomery's Lumber is on the other side of Industrial Street from Embry Lantern, which I showed you pictures of that. And then there was behind Montgomery Lumber. Montgomery Building Supply is on Allen Street, just like Fairview Box Corporation, only Fairview Box Corporation's actual entrance door is on Industrial Street. But the long side of the building is on Allen Street. Behind that was a building, and we'll show that now. That was, and some maps, on at least one map I've seen, it was a piano factory. I'm not sure, I have no idea the history of it, or when it was built, or when it closed, or why they made pianos in Warsaw. But that was an industry. It had a spur next to it. So I'd assume they probably received wood, or maybe piano wire and boxcars, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to do some research on that. But the building now, that's another building of Montgomery Building Supply. They store stuff in there. I think drywall is stored. I think they have drywall and stuff that is sensitive to elements. Like all their other buildings are fairly open, and those, they don't have those in, but they have them in that building. And then the little house thing attached to it was the office for the industry that was there. But now that is a house that is owned by a guy I know and his husband, and they live there. Why you might have noticed the pride flag on the front of the house. You might not have noticed it from the distance. I'm not sure. So that's another business, and that's another building. That's going to be pretty easy. That's a fairly small building, so, and that where Montgomery's Building Supply now is, that's going to be pretty easy to model appropriately. But the Embry Lantern factory, I'm going to have to turn, and I don't want to do that. But if I didn't do that, I would have to extend the layout out this way and make another module on the side, and I just do not have the room for that. And that would also make it hard to take it places and display places, because it's like you got to take up 7.5 feet this way. The people would complain enough about 5 feet going that way. They might not complain that much, but it would take up too much room in the space I have right now. It would also take up too much room when this gets put in the barn. Once that's completed, it would take up really too much space there also. So that's the plan of construction, and my phone is probably really low on battery, so I'm going to turn this video off. I really hope to get to go on this, but right now I only have $20 to my name, and that's not enough. The foam cutter is $20. The Dremel is somewhere between $30 and $60, depending on which one I get. And then a saw is, I don't even want to think about how much that would be. I'll probably get a DeWalt 20 volt thing because I have a 20 volt chainsaw and batteries are compatible. So that's the plan. That's how it's altered. And yeah, a lot more work ahead than I had initially intended. But stay tuned.